If you don't identify it, it is almost impossible to change the pattern. Driven Mofos, welcome back to another episode of The Underestimated Entrepreneur. Again, massive shout out to all of you who have been rating and reviewing the podcast. The numbers keep going up every week, so a massive shout out and thank you to all of those out there who keep rating and reviewing this podcast. It helps us get out to more people around the world, so thank you. All right, let's talk about the handbrake in life and in your life. So at a recent event that I just ran, I spoke to a couple of people about this idea of a handbrake in their own life. Now, what had happened was I get talking to business owners most days. Now, there's a lot of people who come through our community, especially my events like Thrive Time, where they're not business owners. So we do get a lot of people who come through who aren't business owners, but they're driven people. So that event there helps people to get clear on their success map in life. Now, what I find is that even with driven people and business owners, there is a common pattern. And that's them being unaware of what to do with the handbrakes in their own life. Now, we all have handbrakes in life, but it is massively important to identify those handbrakes and release them. Because if you're somebody who's driving fast in life or you want to push hard in life, and you're driving around with a handbrake on, you're eventually going to burn out, just like if you drove around with a handbrake on in your car, you're going to burn out the brake pads. Now, in your own life, you are going to burn out mentally and emotionally, feel stressed out, and you're going to be resentful to people around you if you don't identify the handbrake and release it. Now, this business owner that I was talking to at the event on the weekend, he was telling me how he wanted to grow his business, but he had multiple handbrakes that he was completely unaware of. And when I pointed them out, he said, I know, like most people do when they sort of pop their head up their ass. They will say, I know, but they won't do anything about it. They won't do anything to change it because they just like being stuck in this uncomfortable position. Now, imagine in your own life being stuck at the start line of a race and have your foot on the accelerator, so you're just chewing through fuel, but at the same time, you're not really getting anywhere because you are driving with the handbrake on and it's slowing you down massively. And when I say massively, I mean that you're putting your foot flat on the accelerator in your own life, yet you're just at a crawling pace or a semi-crawling pace. You're going to be burnt out, stressed out, tired, frustrated, resentful, not knowing what to do, being super frustrated because you're like, I've got these big goals, these massive ambitions in life. I want to achieve more. I want to make more money. I want to have the opportunity to go and do things that I want to do in life, yet you feel like you're not getting anywhere. I can almost guarantee you it's because you have one or multiple massive handbrakes. Now, for this person that I was speaking to directly, now there was a group of business owners and a group of people that I was speaking about because this event was a leadership event. So it was probably 3/4 full of business owners and then other people who wanted to better lead their families, better lead their friends, better lead in the businesses that they work for in a managerial position. So there was sort of like a group of different types of people at this event. The group that I was speaking to was mainly business owners. And there was this one guy, and this one guy had a massive handbrake. So I raised it with the whole group and spoke about this handbrake. Now, what is it? Well, it can be multiple different things. Normally, though, it's fear-driven. So first of all, it's your own fears. But then second of all, it's the fears of others, right? So this one guy, he told me that he wanted to grow his business. Now, for the last 12 months, I spoke to him 12 months ago, and he's still stuck in the same position. And he's not stuck in the same position because his business is crap. He's stuck in the same position because he is so scared to drop the hammer and to move forward. Because just like everything in life, you have to have an adversity or multiple adversities in order to develop and grow your own character as an individual. Now, we don't get what we want in life. We get what we deserve. And that pisses a lot of people off because they're like, I deserve more. You don't deserve shit if you haven't got it. Because life will keep throwing adversities at you. And if you don't overcome them, it will eventually drop you back to some levels that you don't want to be at. Now, I think of this as like, remember the old Super Mario game? Now, if you're in a level, what can happen is during that level, there will be a whole bunch of adversities. You know, you get the little mushrooms thrown at you. There are some barriers that you've got to jump over. And your job is to make sure that you keep jumping over them. You keep moving forward. If not, you eventually get hit by something and you drop back to the start of the level. Now, if you get hit too many times, you'll lose your confidence and you'll have to go back and start the game again. Or you've got to go back multiple levels because you just suck at the levels that you're playing at. So what tends to happen in life is that most people get comfortably uncomfortable. It was Grant Cardone who said that being a millionaire can be one of the worst places to sit in, and it was for me. Because what happened was I worked so hard. I had this big goal of achieving millionaire status. I wanted to achieve $1 million of net worth, but I also wanted to achieve $1 million in my company in turnover within a 12-month period. So I worked so fucking hard to get to that point. And then when I got to that point, I was like, cool, we're here. I had a nice car. Jess had a nice car. We were able to sort of travel. We got married. We had one of the most amazing weddings. It was fucking phenomenal. We invited all of our friends from all over the world who flew in for it. And so we just got at that point where we were sort of sitting there going, we've achieved what we wanted. And then what I noticed was fear kicked in. Fear kicked in, and I started fearing losing everything that I had. I started fearing what happens if I can't pay the bills on the home mortgage. What happens if I've got to sell my car because now I've got all these staff members. At the time, it wasn't a huge amount of staff. It was about 13 at the time. But I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to pay bills, especially during some of the hard times like COVID. So I started stressing more. I started worrying. I became afraid of making decisions. I felt like most of the decisions that I was making had been the wrong decisions. And so I was just getting kicked in the face massively in business. So I became more scared. I slept in more. My alarm would go off in the morning and I'm like, I can't be bothered getting out of bed. And life just became tough. And I noticed that life became very monotonous, where I would wake up and it was like the same thing. It was like that Groundhog Day movie on repeat. I would just get up. There was a whole bunch of problems. Everything's tough. Life sucks. Not life sucks like depressed, but like I just know that I'm going to deal with a heap of shit today. And, we're not really getting anywhere. We weren't bringing in new customers. The company wasn't growing. Financially, we weren't growing. That put pressure on me. It put pressure on Jess. The more that I made mistakes, the more Jess would grill me. The more Jess grew me, the less my confidence grew. And the less confident I became, the less confident I became, the less I was willing to make decisions to grow. So I just got stuck in this really bad place. And I noticed over time, I just became more anxious, more stressed, more frustrated, more worried, more afraid. And it just kept building and building and building. And so I see these people who have handbrakes on. And so this guy, when I was speaking to him, I said, look, tell me about what do you think is holding you back? You keep talking about wanting to grow your business. You keep saying that you want to have it set up so the business isn't solely reliant on you because you're frustrated. You're frustrated and stressed because every time there's a problem, staff come to you. And they come to you because the business isn't growing enough in order to start to solve those problems. So you get stuck in the same problems. If we get new problems and we enjoy growth, then it's cool. I love it now because we've been growing pretty much flat out for the last 12 months. And we have some big problems right now because I'm about to head to the US to do a whole speaking tour. It's massively hard trying to organize all these different people all in America for time schedules. A lot of people going, oh, well, you just let me know what dates you're here and I'll see if I can figure out if I can fit you into my calendar. So then I email them, no, can't make those dates. Can you make like 2 weeks beforehand? I'm going, shit, I got to change my itinerary. And then there's flights and accommodation. I'm having to drop about 150 grand US on this tour, which we don't have. The company's making profit, but we don't have that amount of money to just immediately drop on all of the flights, the accommodation. I probably am going to have to take over videographers with me because I'm filming a whole bunch of stuff for YouTube. I'm getting a whole bunch of speakers on my podcast. I'm getting on their podcast. So there's a whole bunch of crazy stuff happening. And it is just so uncertain, so unstructured. But at the same time, I'm loving it because it's growth. And so what I've noticed is my team are enthusiastic. I'm enthusiastic. Every day we're like, right, this thing's moving. Let's quickly grab it. Let's move forward. Let's do things. And so the team have this massive amount of energy behind them. It's fantastic. And so we're tackling these problems head on. Instead of in that past phase, I was so scared because I just felt like I was drowning every day. The shit was hitting the fan. My confidence wasn't there. The team didn't have confidence in me. I was frustrated. They were frustrated. I would talk about how hard everything was and why I was pissed off and frustrated. They were pissed off and frustrated, but didn't really say it. They just acted that way through their behavior. It was just a horrible place to be. And that's why I will never go back to that place where I'm not focused on growth. Because if you're not focused on growth, pushing hard, growing, and really developing those skills that you need through growth, life's just going to kick you down. And so anyway, I was talking to this guy and I said, look, what are your handbrakes? Let's identify them. And the first one we identified was his wife. And it was his wife because she got bought into the business. The business started struggling. He then brings his wife in to help out with the finances and doing some of the administration work, which is completely understandable. The problem is, though, you've got one person who is entrepreneurial. Entrepreneurial people tend to take more risks. They're opportunists. They see an opportunity and they're like, let's go for it. Now, that's fine. That's a great place to be, especially if you are entrepreneurial, because you'll take risks, you'll push the boundary, you will take more risks financially for growth. You'll see an opportunity and you go, let's pop the money in, let's figure out how to make it work, and you move forward. That's an entrepreneur's comfortable position. I'm comfortable taking those risks. Whereas when we first started our company, Jess wasn't. And going through that stage, Jess was not comfortable. She did not understand entrepreneurship. She did not understand business. She did not understand the pain of stagnation. She did not know the damage that is created to the entrepreneur's mindset, to the entrepreneur's ambition and drive. She didn't understand the damage that it causes to a team when there's no growth happening. Growth causes enthusiasm. And so if you've got enthusiasm to keep growing through pains and problems and challenges, the team will stay enthusiastic. There will be this beautiful energy that's there that will push everybody to keep growing and overcome those adversities. Whereas if you don't have that growth, you're just stuck in all these problems, but they're the same problems repeated over and over and over again, and it becomes super frustrating. The business owner starts to doubt themselves all the time. They start to worry about insignificant shit. They get stressed out. They're frustrated. They feel like they're trapped. And when they're like that, it just ruins their energy. When it ruins their energy, they're the leader. Now, when they're the leader and they're not leading because they've lost their enthusiasm, the business just turns to absolute trash, as in the culture is just horrible. And that's what I found in our company. It just turned bad. That's what led me to go and spend so much time and energy developing my leadership skills, to developing my management skills, to rebuilding and restructuring all of the culture, the cultural frameworks that we use in our company. It made me hire the right people. It made me fire the wrong people for our growth. And what we did was we restructured everything, and we went from 13 people essentially down to 1 Australian staff member and 3 offshore staff members. And from there, we had bigger events. We had more people attending our events. We had less problems, less challenges, better clientele, higher levels of profitability. And we just had our biggest first half of a year in the history of the company. And I have less stress, less frustration, less fucking worries and all that crap because I don't have to manage staff that are non-effective, non-productive, which is really cool. So the first thing that we identified was that his wife was one of the handbrakes. She wasn't the main handbrake because he was really the problem. He was the problem because he didn't know how to communicate with her effectively. He didn't know how to make her feel safe. She then didn't trust him to make decisions in the business because she really, deep down inside, thought he was incompetent because he kept making decisions and making mistakes, but he was making mistakes with a lot of the decisions that he was making because he was afraid. So he made half-assed decisions instead of just committing to something and following through with it and making it work. And instead of being the hero in his own business and the hero in his wife's eyes, he became this guy who was just incompetent, who kept stuffing things up, who she was afraid would make all the wrong decisions. She was now afraid financially. They have 2 kids, so she's playing scared as the mother, but also as the wife, also as someone who's involved in the business. We identified, first of all, that she was a handbrake, but he was also driving that handbrake. The second thing that we identified was that there are a couple of key team members in the business that were handbrakes also. Number one, because he didn't know how to drive them effectively through management. So that was another problem. Number 3, the biggest handbrake that he had in his own head was his fear. He was afraid that he would make decisions and fail, and then he would be criticized by his wife. He would then have the fear of losing money. He had the fear of losing clients because staff weren't doing a good job and they were making basic, simple mistakes. He also had the fear of not attracting more clientele. He was just swimming in fear. All of those things are setting him up for massive amounts of failure, massive amounts, right? And there is nothing worse than having all of those fears, all of those stresses, all of those worries, having to deal with them consistently. And I know that if he stays on that path, he's probably going to just dissolve the business, or he's going to end up one of those grumpy old bastards in his 50s or 60s that just complain about everything. They complain about the weather. They complain about how crap everyone is. They complain about how stupid everybody is. They complain about their significant other or their wife or their husband. They just bitch and moan about them. They bitch and moan about their kids. Their whole life sucks. Now, if you know somebody like that, get the fuck away from them, because they are just the most toxic people to be around. And so I can see him going on that trajectory because he has no real enthusiasm or no real energy for life. He's just like, oh, yeah, got to deal with this bullshit again. This is, and it's just that real heavy, dense energy that makes people feel trapped and stuck. And it's a very heavy weight to bear. And so for all of those business owners out there, or anyone in a management position, or anyone in a leadership position, or even anyone who is trying to get better in life, if you start getting in that mindset, that is a massive handbrake. So once we identified these challenges and these handbrakes, we had to go through and work through to help him break those patterns. Now, unfortunately, he wanted to work through them, but the biggest one that he didn't want to deal with was his wife, was his partner. And something that I said to him which really shocked him, but it's 100% true, and that is that no woman respects an indecisive man. Now, there are some women out there who disagree with that, but having worked with tens of thousands of people, I can tell you right now, unconsciously, no woman or even no man respects another indecisive man. I would rather be working with a leader who makes the wrong decision, but who backs themselves and goes hard, than someone who makes a poor decision who is uncertain of the decisions that they're making. And we all know this, because if you've ever been in the car with someone who is indecisive, it scares the shit out of you. If I've ever been in a car with someone who is indecisive and they're like, oh, I'm not sure where I'm going. Oh, should I turn here? Should I not turn here? It makes me feel really unsafe and really scared. Whereas I've been in rally cars and race cars before. I've been in the rally car with David Hall, the Australian junior rally champion. And we were doing like over 200 kilometers an hour through the twisty, turny roads all through the Adelaide Hills here. And we were going past these massive, huge gum trees where the mirror was almost clipping the tree as we're going past it at 200 kilometers an hour around corners. And I never felt unsafe. I felt completely safe, strapped in this racing harness, buckled in, helmet on, just going flat out through these corners. And in that moment, I knew that he had absolute control of that car, and I had 100% trust in him. I felt safer in that than going through those same roads with someone doing 50 kilometers an hour who is unsure and has a lot of doubt. In life, leadership is really about having certainty, backing yourself, and saying to the people around you, hey, I got it. And even when there are problems, you're like, hey, they're just problems. It's okay. We know that they're going to be there. We know that they're always going to be there. We are going to solve one problem, and then the next problem is going to occur, and we'll work on that. So you need to work with your team through communicating effectively, but more importantly, having confidence and self-belief within yourself that you're going to overcome those challenges. Now, remember, you cannot have courage without fear. If you have fear, the only thing that helps you overcome it is clarity and courage. So you have to be courageous in the face of fears, of worries, of doubts, of uncertainties. If you do not, you cannot lead people. And I see these shitty leaders all the time who are supposed to lead a team of people who have so much uncertainty, fear, doubt, worry, and everything running through their mind. It makes them unconfident. And when they lack confidence, the team around them become unconfident in them. And it is almost impossible to drive a team forward when you have that. And this is why it frustrates me that in my industry, in the coaching industry, there are all these like highly logical, highly intelligent people who jump into the coaching space and they're like, it's all just numbers and data. It's not numbers and data. Numbers and data can help a person feel more confident and more safe. But most of the time, if you're creating projections or anything into the future, those numbers can give you a little bit more certainty and a little bit more confidence, a little bit more comfort. But the thing is, if you don't back yourself, if you don't have that internal confidence, when problems, when fears, when worries, when uncertainties start popping up, whether it's a change in economy, whether it's a change in government, whatever that thing is, then you're going to get rattled. And when you're rattled, your team won't follow you. They will not follow you. They will doubt you. And do you know the amount of people that I meet and they say, my boss is an idiot. My boss is incompetent. My boss can't do XYZ. My boss can't make high quality decisions. Why? Because most people are scared. And this isn't just small business, this is corporate business. I go into corporate business all the time and they say, my boss is incompetent. Why? Because a lot of the time, red tape is created because people don't want to make decisions. So they just palm it off. They'll just go, oh, it's not me, it's the leadership above me. And then the leadership above them go, it's not me, it's somebody else. And then they go, yeah, but somebody else. And so decisions just get tossed around. Why? Because people lack courage, they lack certainty, they lack clarity, and also they probably have shitty leaders above them. So shitty leadership gets passed down. Great leadership also gets passed down. So for any business owner here, if you're not developing your leadership skills, if you're not developing your competence, your courage, your commitment, and you just keep pushing through, and even when there are problems, instead of you doing what most shitty business owners do or shitty people do who freak out when there are problems. I see this in trade-based businesses all the time where communication skills are very poor in most businesses. This is why it is so easy to win, especially in trade-based businesses, because most people will never develop the skills of a good business owner. What they will do is they will make money and then justify that money is the solution to their shitty problems that they keep creating within their business. Then they'll say things like, all staff are crap, the economy, they'll blame the government, they blame everything else apart from themselves for why their business isn't growing, or why their business is growing financially, yet all the other areas of their business are just falling apart. Absolutely horrible place to be in. So the first thing is you identify the handbrakes, you've got to work through the handbrakes. As I mentioned before, no person trusts someone who is indecisive. No woman trusts a man who is indecisive. So when I see especially men going home to their wives or to their girlfriends or whatever and complaining about how shit everything is at work, in their business, then their wives take on that fear. And then all of a sudden they want to grow a bigger business and they go, hey, I'm going to invest this money. Of course their partners are going to say, oh, but what about all these fear-based things? They're going to bring it up. Why do you think they're going to bring it up? Because you've spent the last 2 years complaining about how shit staff are, how incompetent everybody is, how crap your business is. They're going to see you stressed out, worried, frustrated, because you bring that shit home. Now, it is also scientifically proven that women have more fear than what men do, right? There is a character trait called neuroticism. Women tend to be more neurotic, which means they tend to have more negative experiences or more negative thoughts or more fear-based responses. Now, that could be partially due to evolution. If you look at evolutionary psychology, women have more things to fear throughout history, especially in a tribe. They have more challenges through being pregnant. It makes them feel more unsafe because they are more unsafe, especially in a tribal situation. But also, they don't have the same strength, the same power as what men do. That's why men tend to make big problems small and women tend to make small problems larger. It's an evolutionary process. Now, by the way, that's not all women and it's not all men, right? It depends a lot on whether they relate more to masculine energy or feminine energy. I'm not going to go into that. There's a whole nother podcast on that. If you go through, there's a couple of episodes on masculine and feminine energy. And I talk about it from why that idea or that theory has been used for thousands of years. And most people these days have fucked it up. But it's super important when you're leading people because you have to understand that if you're leading people that are more feminine, they're going to be more fear-based and they're going to have more worry, which means that they need more certainty in their leader. And so if there is a man trying to lead their family and they're in a heterosexual relationship, or even if they're in a homosexual relationship, the more masculine person needs to provide safety and certainty, both psychological and physical, to the people around them. If you have a business owner or a person who's supposed to be in a leadership position who is emotionally unstable, they're peaking and troughing, they doubt themselves, they don't back themselves, they're afraid, they're scared, they worry about everything all the time. They go home, they talk about all their financial problems and shit like that. They talk through all their fear and doubt. It makes their partner feel completely unsafe. And then the next time they go to drop the hammer on a big decision and they want to be decisive, their partner's going to bring up all the negative shit. Because the other thing that most people don't realize is that women tend to have better memories, especially around emotional circumstances, than what men do. So a woman will bring up all the shit that they've gone through in the past, mentally and emotionally, based on what their partner said. So they will bring that up. So let's say the masculine person goes home, says, hey, I want to grow the business. I want to hire 3 new staff. I want to invest in some form of coaching. I want to invest in growing my business. The partner's going to go, Yeah, but we don't have the money. Yeah, but what about staff? What about management? What about leadership? What about that old staff member that we hired that never worked out? They're going to bring all that shit up because they remember it. It's important to them because that's what makes them feel unsafe. And this is why I say to a lot of people who do my Business Odyssey program, instead of going home and complaining and bitching and moaning to your partner, bitch and moan to me. Go and speak to other people in the community who are business owners and talk through your problems with them. Don't go home and talk through them with your partner. Now, there are plenty of people out there who say, well, I disagree. Your partner has to know. Maybe. But I'm just telling you that if you want less head fucks and hassles, both at home and in business, don't do that. And if someone disagrees, I have worked with tens of thousands of people and am one of the world's best mental performance coaches and human behavior coaches. And I'm telling you right now that a woman can say to a man, no, I don't mind listening to those problems. That doesn't mean that it's not going to bring up doubt and fear and stress and worry in their own mind, and they're not going to bring that up in the next conversation about your growth, or that they're not going to bring that up the next time that you're about to make a decision. So I'm just saying, be careful with it. You know, a gun is completely safe, but just put in the wrong hands, it can shoot you and it can kill you, right? And it can kill people around you. Sometimes putting those stresses and those worries onto the wrong person can cause a lot of damage. And I'm just saying there are better options. Now, you can live life however you want, but I'm just telling you what I've found working with tens of thousands of people. You've got to identify the handbrakes, let them off, and then start making decisions. So this guy, we identified that his partner was the biggest handbrake because he was afraid to make decisions because of her. He didn't want to let her down. She kept bringing up all the financial problems and all the financial issues in the business, which of course she's going to, because this person put her managing the fucking finances. So she sees the finances and the financial difficulty. And then because he has a lack of ability to both lead and manage people and give them certainty around them, all she sees is that the business is in this challenge. They are struggling financially on the books. And then from there, he just keeps making all these shitty, indecisive decisions. And so the business is stagnating. There's no proper culture or no drive with the team to want to grow out of those problems. And so all she sees is day after day, problem. And then now she looks at the books, goes, shit, we're not making any money. This is a huge problem. Then he says, I want to grow. She says, well, we don't have the money. What about staff? What about all these problems? He then loses his confidence and shuts down and then doesn't make any decisions. Instead of saying, hey, honey, let's sit down. Let's talk about all your fears and all your worries. Let me acknowledge them all because they're highly valid. But here's my solution. My solution is that we grow the company in this way. We've got to grow the culture. For the next 6 months or so, it's going to be tough, but we can grow out of this. And by the way, I know this because I had to have that exact conversation with Jess. And when I had that conversation, she is now a beast. She now pushes me because she will say, like with the US trip, there were some doubts that I had. And she's like, no, we will make it work because we always have. Because I keep reinforcing that confidence with her, when I lose my confidence, she pushes me. But when she loses the confidence, I then hop back in and I make sure that I build that confidence in her so she feels comfortable with the decisions that I'm about to make. So anyway, Driven Mofos, with this guy, I had to identify the handbrake, which was his partner, but also the second biggest handbrake was all of his fears, all of his doubts, because the more he was in fear, the more he feared. The more he felt uncomfortable, the more he kept making decisions that led him back to this discomfort. The more he stayed and played small, the worse staff that he kept hiring because he was hiring out of desperation because he couldn't sell the inspiration of growth to these new people who were coming into his business. It was harder for him to sell jobs because when he would go out to sell jobs, he lacked the confidence to just say, hey, look, if you don't want to pay us what we're worth, we completely understand. Here's a competitor, go work with them. He was afraid to do that because he felt like he needed the money. And so because of that, he was taking on shitty customers and shitty clients who were over demanding, who wanted more than what they were paying for, who complained all the time. And again, it just created more of these problems. So what you'll find is that when you've got the handbrake on, it's only going to get worse. There's only two ways that you can essentially move from fear and from a lack of growth. That is, you have to downsize and collapse, which then means that you're going to go to lower levels that you feel comfortable with in life. That's a really fucking shitty place to be because no living organism wants to decrease the way that they live, to decrease the way that they operate. That's not how living organisms operate. They want better. And so if we want better, we have to expand and grow out of our problems. It's the only way forward. But this is also what I find is that when you live in fear and doubt, it is hard to expand and grow out of your problems because of fear. You will naturally doubt that things are going to work. And I speak to business owners all the time who do this. They say, I want to grow my business. And I say, here's the price, here's the cost of me to help you. And they go, I don't know, that's expensive. But it's their doubt and fear. Like, if you think about this intelligently, you've got one of the world's top human behavior coaches and mindset coaches who can come in and help you grow your business, who has also grown his business and hundreds of other businesses and has grown a lot. Like, I've added billions of dollars onto the growth of businesses. That's billions with a B. Now, you've got someone sitting there saying, I would love to work with you and I know that I can help you. And then you're doubting whether it's worthwhile dropping the money because you're afraid that you won't make more money back. You're afraid that if you keep making shitty decisions, you're never going to get your money back and the business is only going to get worse. So you lack that insight, that motivation, that ability to see into the future and go, you know what, I need this now to happen because if not, I don't grow to the next level. And that's why I had to do this US trip, because the US trip was an opportunity to grow. Now, I've been saying for 10 years or 11 years that I'll be in the US doing a US gig. This year, when January dropped, I said to Jess, I'm going to the US, and I booked my first podcast. Now, by the way, it was a paid podcast. So I had to drop, I think, 5 or 10 grand US to get on this podcast. But what I knew was that once I dropped it, I then had to book flights, I had to book accommodation. It was already locked in. Now, if I'm going to the US and I'm going to spend money on flights and accommodation, I'm not going there for 2 days. That would be a complete waste of money. So now I had to backfill it. And so I went, right, I'm going to be there for 3 weeks. Let's just fill it up with as many podcasts as I can, with as many dinners as I can, interviews. Let's see if I can run an event. Let's see what we can do over in the US and let's make this work. And so the majority of this whole year has been massively uncertain because I'm going back and forward. I'm trying to work with schedules, itineraries. I'm not sure whether I'm going to run an event yet over there because I'm just sort of putting the feelers out to feel how many people I can get and if it's going to be worthwhile hiring a venue. So there's a lot of uncertainty, but what I know is that I'll make it work. Why? Because I back myself and I've let that handbrake go. Most people in that same situation, first of all, would have never dropped the hammer because clarity. So you need to have clarity around what you want in the future. And then courage are the two things that create growth. If you don't have clarity and you don't have, and by the way, when you start making decisions, you won't have clarity. You will have clarity around a decision you need to make, but you won't have clarity on the outcomes and everything like that. So you've got to have clarity on the decisions you need to make, which most of the time it's, do I want to grow or do I not want to grow? If you want to grow, that's the clarity that you need to start dropping the hammer and making decisions. And then the next thing is you need to have courage. If you don't have courage, you will not make the decisions. You'll just go back to fear. Courage is the counterbalancer to fear. So you either have courage or you have fear. You don't have one without the other. You do not have courage without fear. And you do not have fear unless it's going to bring up the courage within you to keep moving forward. The question is, how much fear and how much courage do you need to make decisions? Anyway, I hope that helps, Driven Mofos. Go and figure out what those handbrakes are and then how you're going to overcome them. Watch what happens. When you identify them and work through those handbrakes, you'll release them and off you go. Anyway, have a great day. Keep kicking ass. Please, if you haven't rated and reviewed this podcast, please just click on there's a little star button on whatever app you're using. It takes literally 1 or 2 seconds to just rate the podcast. And it makes a massive difference to me and my team because they see it and it inspires them to keep pushing hard. You know, a lot of the time, I lose money on these podcasts. I've got to hire a team to edit them and everything like that. That comes out of my pocket. For me, it's just part of what I do. But for them, it is so important to see those numbers keep going up. So if you haven't rated and reviewed this podcast yet on whatever app you're listening to, please just click the little stars and just rate it. It will literally take 2 seconds. Anyway, thanks, Driven Mofos. I appreciate you, and I'll see you on the next episode of The Underestimated Entrepreneur. Most people waste their life, and I just don't want you to be one of them.